Hey, what's up, YouTube? My name is Professor X, and welcome to The Link. Here on my channel, I like to focus on all of the important areas of our lives: our friendships, our relationship with God, and our God given purpose, and to present Christ as the missing link to bring everything together. All right, everyone, this is the grand finale, part 5 on our series on toxic masculinity. I just want to thank everybody who has been here for the previous videos, everyone who's liked, who's shared, who's subscribed. Thank you so much for the support. And I know that today will also be a very good video. I have a personal friend of mine coming on to talk about this topic, and I'm sure that we're going to gather a lot from what we go into. And so without further ado, I'm going to introduce him and let's go straight into the discussion. All right, guys, so here he is, Mr. Omari O'Neill, a very good personal friend of mine, and definitely glad to have him on. So Omari, let us in on who Omari O'Neill is. Let's know, who is that?
To make it simple, I'm an artist, straight off the bat. When it comes to music, songwriting, fashion, grooming, I'm just an artist. I love art. I love creating things. I love seeing people create things. I love any aspect of art I'm interested in. I'm also a Christian, pastor's son, Bishop Martin husband, Susan husband. Shout out to my family. Shout out to Sanctuary Employment Center. I'm a husband. I'm a son. I'm a brother. I'm a nephew. I'm a man. That is exactly who I am. That's who I am, man.
Well, I'm glad to have you on. Today, guys, we are talking about communication. So if you guys have been following the series, we have been addressing a whole set of topics of where men can become toxic in their mindsets. And to close it off, we want to talk about something that a lot of us might look over, but it's very important, and that is communication. And so I'm looking forward to a talk today, bro.
Yeah, me too, boy. Me too.
Okay, so Omari, the first thing we need to figure out when it comes to communication, what is it that can make the man become toxic? First of all, what is that mindset? When it comes to communication, what is that toxic mindset?
I think the toxic mindset when it comes to communication is the defeating of oneself. So, like, if in your mind you are less than who you are, that is where your toxicity begins.
Right.
I think, like, because we are so influenced by things around us, if the influence says you are not good enough, or if the influence says you're not worth anything, then the toxicity begins. You can either go the full left, which is be what everybody says you are, or fight it and go full right and become something better. But it had to start with the influence of the toxicness. So toxicity will enter, but it's up to you to get rid of it or keep it or magnify it. You know? It has to develop in the mind, and the way that things develop in the mind is by sight, hearing, and smell. So all of our senses create the reality or the illusion of what it is that we feel or think.
Right.
In my opinion.
Right. So when we deal with something like this, it has to do with our influence, has to do with our senses. So when we look at that toxic mindset of communication, where would you say it normally starts? I mean, oftentimes a lot of these things might start in the home, which we can talk about. But besides the home, what are some of the other places you think it can begin or develop, I should say?
Well, there's a saying that goes, you're a product of your environment.
Right.
But people tend to think that your environment is just where you live or where you go to school.
Right.
Your environment is everything that impacts your senses, especially your hearing and your sight.
Right.
So we could talk about social media. We could talk about television. We could talk about music. We could talk about where you go to work. We could talk about relationships. Like, your communication is created by who, how, and how often you're around people or things. It doesn't have to be in home. Let's say a parent don't talk at home. That kid is not going to learn communication from them. Well, that speaking communication, because they're probably going to learn how to shut off.
Right.
as a form of communication.
Yeah.
But when they get out and they hear people talking, or they listen to things like, I got a nephew that just talk like an American. He's a Bajan, like he was born in Barbados,
Right.
but he speaks like an American because he listens to a bunch of cartoons that are American based.
Right.
So he
Right.
will talk to us in his little mini accent. And it's like, well, your parents are American. But what is he listening to most?
Right.
That.
Exactly.
So I think that's where it comes from. I think that's where the communication is developed from. What you hear, what you see.
Right. All right. So what we see is a lot of these mindsets, this one in particular, can be developed by the things we see, the things that we are around, not just people, but also social media, also the things we read, also the things we watch.
Mhm.
And so that seems to be how that develops. But what I also want to talk about is when it comes to communication, I've realized that us men tend to fall in a particular box often. Of course, not all men fall in this category, but it's something that has been happening so much I can't ignore it. And that is the man that shuts down
Mhm.
when he is faced with difficult situations or uncomfortable situations. I would have spoken in a previous video with Dr. Graham, and we were touching on man's uncomfortability with vulnerability.
Right.
So when a man is in that vulnerable state, we see a lot of guys that would either shut down or mask.
Right.
So is there anything that you'd like to add on that?
But one of the things that I find interesting is the reason for shutting down.
The reason.
Because it's like, I could talk about myself. When I started to shut down, and not communicate how I was feeling,
Right.
it was mostly because if I talked about how I felt, I would feel like if I was weak.
If you're
Or
weak.
I felt I was a sissy. You know what I'm saying? Because every time something is wrong, you're gonna be asked by your grandmother or your father or your uncles or whatever, up on you. Like,
What's the problem?
What's the problem? Like, what you crying? Like,
Yeah.
pull out your socks, pull on your pants, and look good on your work,
Exactly.
right? Because you're supposed to be tough.
Yeah.
But the misconception is that being vulnerable means that you're not tough. That is one of the biggest lies that I've ever been told.
Right.
And it's not that my parents outright said, if you cry, you can be a sissy.
Right.
But it is the not seeing those type of people cry. Like, not actually seeing my father cry.
Right,
That
you
didn't
don't
happen
see it.
until like years down the road when he was like able to say, yo, this is how I feel. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Because he didn't want to show his sons that, you know, he was weak. But he understood part of being a man is actually crying.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, but I was one person. My
Right.
uncles, that man was tough. They don't
Yep.
they don't cry for nothing. Like,
At
we're talking
all.
about uncles falling off motorcycles and ain't crying. You know what I mean? Getting
Yeah.
fights, ain't crying.
Ain't crying.
So that plus, you know, being a boy in secondary school, you cry is more licks
Yeah.
for you.
Exactly.
Like, from everybody else, right? So you pair that with me going to boxing and being tough skinned. Meeting women, I definitely didn't want to let it consistency. I didn't want to be considered soft. But it's only later on that I was like, yo, this is actually what women want. This is what people actually need to see that,
Exactly.
you know, being vulnerable is possible. Because if you're not vulnerable, you can't relate. So pain for somebody would just be an excuse for you.
Right.
And that is never good because you gotta be
No.
able to understand that person's pain and be like, oh, whoa. Oh, this
Yeah.
is how you feel?
Exactly.
That's crazy. Right? So I think seeing men not cry watching movies, no man cries. Watch
Exactly.
action movies is like, it's just pure licks.
Exactly.
This man bleeding from his head.
Poker
He ain't shed
face.
a tear. Like, how are you standing right now? And you got a whole gunshot. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
a lot of things.
this is not real. Watching Superman, watching superheroes. These men don't cry. That in turn, kind of subconsciously, unconsciously, makes you feel like I can't show you that I am hurting.
Yeah.
And then because of that, I don't understand that I'm hurting.
Right. I like how you touched on that, because that is something, it's a light that can expand. So like
Yeah.
how you said, we think to ourselves we should not show weakness,
Right.
but then we get upset with ourselves because we know it's there.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember watching a video, I can't remember who's speaking, but he was saying that with men you can almost suffer a slow death.
Wow.
Because there's so many emotions that you are packing in, that you're
Right.
boxing in,
Yep.
that are there. You're upset that you have them, but you think I shouldn't show them because I need to be strong.
Exactly.
So you're dealing with a tug of war.
Yeah.
Constantly.
Yep. Yep.
Even when everyone else around you is having a good time, even when they're chilling, sitting down, everybody's around, you're isolated in your feelings because you don't think I can share it. But you then have to use all of your mental energy to keeping it in. Exactly. So you have nothing else to give.
Exactly. That's where communication falls short when it comes to any type of relationship. So if my mother and I want to be close, she's my mother. The one thing I should be able to tell her is I don't feel good.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's that stigma and that indoctrination of you have to figure it out yourself. But really and truly, that's not what our parents want us to do most of the time. Well, our mothers, right? That's not what God wants us to do most of the time, because if we're not doing it with people, we're definitely not doing it with Him.
Right.
As a man. This is actually a lot deeper than just us shutting down, because when we shut down, then the reactions are explosive.
Yeah. And then how people deal with us also changes.
And how people see us also changes.
Right. And it's interesting to me that a lot of the things we fear when it comes to being vulnerable is completely in our head.
Facts.
Because when you actually muster the strength to communicate how you feel,
Facts.
the person's response is like they've been waiting for you, waiting on you, like finally. You know,
Facts, man.
I've had these experiences myself where I would look at situations and the last thing I wanted to do was to speak was what was on my mind. But when I finally mustered the courage, and let me tell you, that took a while, but once it came out, what came after that shocked me. It was peaceful. It was uncomfortable, yes, but you can tell healing was starting. And that reminds me of something that's in James. The book of James reminds us that we should confess our faults one to another so that we can receive healing. So that suggests that if you do not, if you keep it in all the time, there's a degree of healing that's not going to come to you.
Yeah. But you know, people think that with that scripture in itself, it's so interesting that you brought it up. People think that faults are just the sins.
Right.
When the Bible talked about confessing your faults one to another, it didn't specifically just mean confessing your sins. Right. It meant confessing the stuff that was wrong with you.
Yeah.
It like that literally meant lean on one another with your thoughts. Confessing your faults. What is a fault? A fault is an insecurity.
Yep.
A fault is a negative thought. A fault is also a sin. So we think when that was written, we think confess the sins one to another. That stops us, one, from ever confessing anything, because we don't want judgment at all from nobody. Like, we're not gonna tell somebody what we
Yeah.
So because we don't want judgment from that thing, we also don't want judgment from, oh really, dog, this you suffering with? Like, you depressed? Like, why you depressed?
Yeah, why?
You know what I mean? Like, why do you care what other people think? Why does this affect you so much? Instead of actually hearing somebody say, yo, I totally get it. Like, I know how you feel, but you can't stay here. It's a different approach. So we get afraid of what people are going to think. And that same scripture is forgotten about.
Right.
But I feel like God put the scripture in there to help us to also confess to Him.
Confess to Him, yep.
Because once we could do it in person, doing it in
To him,
spirit,
yeah.
it's a lot easier because we've seen the tangible effects of, if I tell you, yo, Zib, this is what's going on. And because you got God in you, technically, I talking to him too.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So that makes our relationship stronger,
Right.
but it also makes this relationship stronger.
Yeah.
And people never connect the dots to those two things. So it was real interesting that you brought up that verse, because I remember when I only thought that verse meant just tell your sins,
Just tell your
to
sins.
one another.
Yeah. But something else we have to understand as men. Something I've also heard people say sometimes when it comes to God is that they think he doesn't care about their issues.
Wow.
Right? Or maybe he's just another one of those people trying to say toughen up or get past this. So they don't really bring it to God,
Right.
because they either think he doesn't care or he's another voice in the wilderness telling them, be a man.
Or they don't think that they're worthy.
Right.
For him to hear what they have to say.
But when we look at, there's a passage in the Gospels where Jesus gives an analogy of a tax collector and a Pharisee. So the tax collector was filled with so humble that he could not even look up to heaven.
Facts.
But he said, Father,
Facts.
have mercy on me, a sinner.
Facts.
And the Pharisee was puffed up. He said, God, I thank you that I'm not like other men, even this tax collector. And Jesus said plainly, God heard the tax collector, not the Pharisee. So what God is looking for is not big accolades. He's not looking for a job title. What he's looking for is humility
and vulnerability.
Exactly.
That's so accurate.
Yeah.
That's the craziest illusion, and I think that starts every side effect. That starts every side effect of why men aren't emotionally vulnerable when they need to be, because it's always about, one, is this gonna make me look soft? Too hard, people gonna see me after that. That I'm learning now,
Right.
because I'm dealing with a similar situation, right? Do I want to really care about what people see me as? Do I really care about how people see me? Or do I care about how God sees me?
Right.
And part of how God is going to see me is if I'm vulnerable to him.
Exactly.
Because vulnerability also means dependability. Can I depend on you? Can I trust you? If I'm vulnerable as a person, that means people that I talk to I trust.
Right.
So can I trust them? Can I trust you? I don't care how somebody else sees me, because if I trust God, then I know how he's going to see me, just however.
You can't build trust if you don't talk.
You can't build trust if you don't talk.
Can't build
Talk
trust
equals trust. That's it.
Yeah.
2 T's. Everything starts in your head. And that can trip you up. I mean, your mind can create such a reality that cripples you from any form of growth ever.
Yeah.
That is scary.
It is scary because if you guys have been following this series, when you look at all of the other things that I've spoken about with the different guests, almost every single time we hear vulnerability, we hear the mind, we hear faith, we hear depending on God.
Yep.
Those things, those go into the fabric of almost everything that we do. Because when we look at vulnerability, we realize it's not just communication.
Correct.
It's also relationships.
Correct.
It's also business. It's also everything that we've spoken about in this series. So that's why it is so important for us, guys, to address those issues. Also to know it's not wrong to do that.
No, it ain't.
It's not wrong. The first thing that has to change is understanding what's actually right.
Right.
And versus what we've been told is right or shown is right.
Correct.
We got to reverse that lie that being vulnerable is wrong. That's not wrong.
Correct.
It just depends on who you show vulnerability to.
Exactly.
Because Jesus also said, don't cast your pearls before swine. Whether they're Because if you do that, they'll turn again and beat you up for it. So yes, you have to be careful who you're vulnerable to, but the word also says you will know people by what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So if you know a person who has had your back your entire life or for a season, or you realize they follow God, that is a person you can trust with those kind of feelings.
Yeah.
And it's also kind of likely that they're waiting on you.
Probably.
Right?
Probably.
So
because they see, the thing is that we are canvases. That's a better word. People can relate themselves to a canvas.
Right.
Or to a photo.
It's true.
But we don't get to see the photo.
No.
So when somebody's looking on, they can see, there's something that is not right with Omari. Or there's something not right with Xavier.
Right.
What is going on? But they also know in past experiences, or don't really tell you what happened.
Everything.
Or just be like, I could be. I got this straight. But they're sitting down in the corner just praying like, yo.
And they can't help you.
Whatever is that bugging this dude, God please. And then I know that you been through it. And I'm like, yo, I can ask this dude how the hell he
got through this.
Mm-hmm. But I don't want to. I am so scared of what Xavier can tell me. Like, he can be like, bro, you used to pass or something. Like, it's like you struggling with this. Nah. I don't I didn't even want to think about that. I can just be like, yo, bro, I didn't talk to you. And because of, like you said, because of the relationship built, or because we've spoken before, I can be comfortable saying, yo, this is bugging me.
But it's interesting, right? That if we allow those thoughts to stop us from reaching out, because the thing is, right, a person can pray for you from now until next year, the year after that, and the year after that. But the only time it actually changes is when you take that step. It's true that prayer has power, but that power is what makes you move. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, if we don't take that step forward to share what's on our mind, then the healing we're asking for, longing for, that's the only way it's going to come.
And it's interesting. Like, I have a theory about prayer. I feel like, and this is just a theory, I feel like prayer helps to cultivate the belief that it is going to happen. Right. So if I pray that something is going to come through for me, the prayer has to be the foundation of my belief.
Right.
I'm not requesting. I'm praying. I am stating, God, I want this to happen. And in me wanting this to happen, I believe that this is going to come through for me.
Right.
I am not caught up in when. I'm not caught up in how. I just
want it to happen.
Right. I want it to happen. So then it is, what am I praying for? Am I praying for something to be controlled that I can't control? Or am I actually praying for something that can be controlled? So your success in your career can be controlled. So you pray for focus and success.
Right.
Because this is what you want. I want to be one of the greatest golfers ever did. It can be controlled. Things happened, but because of your abilities, your skills, the way you work, and the trust that you have in God, it can be controlled. You don't necessarily control it, but it can be controlled, right?
Right.
So when you start to pray for it continuously, you move and you act as if it is going to happen. When somebody is sick, what do you pray?
That's an interesting one.
Because you cannot control if that body passes away or not. You cannot. That is literally up to him. So what you pray is, God, let your will be done in this situation. Cover their families from the pain that can be caused.
Right.
I felt. God, if it is your will that they recover, may they recover stronger than they ever went. But if not,
right,
cover their families. What is the prayer that I'm praying? Because how am I communicating to God what is that I actually want or need?
Yeah.
That's an interesting philosophy.
That's an interesting one.
That's an
All
interesting
right.
philosophy.
So, Omari, we're coming on to the end of this, but before we close off, what would you say are some of the key takeaways that we can pull from this? Some practical steps that we as men can apply so that communication is not just understood but practiced.
I think going based on what I've learned or how I've become this way, practice saying how you feel raw. Just outright say, this is how I feel. Then practice wording your feelings properly.
Wording. Yep.
Because how you say stuff and what you say can be misconstrued. I've learned
very
that
easily.
Being in a relationship, being married, I've learned that. What you say, because you can say how you feel, but how you say it can mess up the other person.
Yeah.
And that's not what you.
So understanding who you're talking to.
Yeah, oh my goodness, understanding who you're talking to. That's fantastic, bro. Understanding who you're talking to. You can say how you feel blunt to God, but He get it.
Right.
But you can't say how you feel blunt to me.
Exactly.
Because that moment in time when you feel like, oh my goodness, my mother is driving me crazy, do not walk up to your mother and be like, yo, you're driving me crazy. That is not.
Nope.
That is not it. Yeah. But being able to say, yo, mom, right now, I just not liking the energy between, like, learning how to word your feelings. And like you said earlier, picking the ears that you're speaking to.
Right.
Choose your ears wisely. Those who you speak to, choose wisely. Choose
who you listen to, speak to. Yes. Yeah.
Bro.
Yeah.
Because those can mess up your life for a very long time.
Yeah.
And it can be people that are directly close to you.
It's true.
Because once you get messed up by those who are close to you, your trust level is, you don't trust nobody with nothing.
It's true.
And that's how that shutting down begins. And you start to bottle yourself up and like, I don't trust nobody with this.
So it's important to find the right people. Also, the last thing that I think we have to highlight is when it comes to communication, we have to remember that vulnerability is not a bad thing.
And it equals victory, bro.
Exactly. You gotta break down that lie.
I know we're wrapping up, but if it's one thing that I have learned in this season of being able to say how I feel, I have valued my happiness a lot more by saying how I feel.
By saying how you feel.
By being vulnerable, it allows me to not keep in anything. I mean anything. So if something is stressing me and I know I got boys I could call, I literally go and message them. They don't have to tell me nothing else, you know.
Right.
I say, yo, bro, this is what getting on me right now. Boom. After that, I'm cool.
Is gone.
I remember a time. I remember recently. I messaged my mother. She asked me how life is and stuff like that, and I rattled off some things, bro. And I went. But these stuff that I would never tell my mother on a normal day, right? I just went off. I was like, "Mommy, I can't understand." And she said, "Yeah, I know how you feel, bro." I was like, I felt better. Let's go to the gym now. like, because having those negative feelings, I'm one person that says a lot. I can't be around negative energy too much because I'm like a sponge. So if I'm around negative energy, eventually I can start to feed off of it and I can start to produce it, right? And I don't like that. I don't like being negative. I don't like having negative feelings. I don't like that. Right. So being in a relationship with a woman really teaches you that you have to be able to tell them how you feel, even if it hurts.
Yeah.
Because it is not going to be good if you are in a negative space and she's in a negative space. It is not good.
Yeah, because then it shows up in random places.
Random, like, all to the blue.
Random
I'm gonna start a
places.
fight about ice cream, and I just cut it ice cream at somebody. Like, I don't like. I have had vulnerability. I have had some blowing up moments, and that means my temper was so high. I would cuff walls. That's actually why I picked up boxing, because I just needed to release stress, not realizing that boxing isn't necessarily gonna help me release the stress. It's a way to express the emotion, but what can help me release the stress is seeing how I feel
Exactly.
or addressing the situation. Because
Yeah.
it's not everything that you need to tell somebody either,
True.
right? So there are times when you tell God, "Yo, I am feeling like crap." He's the only body that
The
you
only
can offer,
person you could talk
the
to.
only body that you could talk to and
Yeah.
say every single thing.
Exactly.
Because there's some things that people don't need to know. It takes time to sit and analyze. When this happens, this is how I feel. When she says this is how I feel. When he says this is how I feel. At this point, when somebody tells you it, Ramon, is this true?
Right.
Or is this true? Like, is this true? What they're saying?
And it's interesting what you're saying, because it then says that to get better at communication, you don't only have to become more vulnerable, you also have to become self-aware.
Oh, bro.
You can't just know, okay, I need
Bro.
to let my emotions out. You need to figure out where those are coming from. Because it was interesting with us guys, a lot of us have been so indoctrinated in that tough mentality
Yep.
that we blind ourselves to what's actually going on.
Correct.
So we might figure out we're angry, but we figure out too late.
Too late.
And even if we do figure out, we have
somebody
no
got
clue where it
boss
came
face.
from.
Yeah.
So-
But I would suggest to you also that comes from learning how to love yourself.
Exactly.
Because when you learn to love yourself, people think loving themselves only means appreciating who they are. No, fam. When we go into loving people, what do we talk about? We talk about learning them.
Right.
Learning what ticks them off.
Mm-hmm.
Learning what makes them smile.
Yeah.
That is part of loving yourself.
Learn.
When you love yourself, you have to learn, yo, bro, what ticks you off? Or what makes you angry? If I learn that, every time I'm gonna be able to say, yo, right here,
You can tell them. Yeah.
this right here, I don't like. Do not do
Stop
this.
the issue before it happens.
Because if we continue on this trajectory, something bad is gonna happen.
Right.
And that took me a year to learn how to love myself. And I haven't mastered it because love takes time.
Yeah.
You never figure out until you're dead. That's not a bad thing, because every time you get older, something different about you changes. So then you learn to love that thing.
Yeah.
And that helps you to then tell people, yo, if you do this right now, this is gonna rub me the wrong way. Don't
accurate.
Yeah.
In how you communicate.
And it can be specific because I took the time.
Exactly.
It's really mindset. It's
Yeah.
really mindset. Mindset
Yeah.
just is the fundamental thing to everything that we figure out.
Right.
You know?
So, as we close off, one thing that I want you guys to know is that when we come to that place of dealing with the mindset, it starts momentum for everything else to change. That's something that I've been realizing, because recently I've been working on my mindset, especially as I've been doing these YouTube videos, guys. This has been keeping me accountable,
Bro.
right? So it's been helping me understand what makes me tick, what has been causing me to feel upset, what's been causing me anger. And as I'm figuring those things out, I now have the areas that I can attack and improve on. Because now, when you figure out where that mindset starts for you, then you know where the battle is. A lot of things we don't know there's a battle. So the first thing is to figure out there's a battle. And then once you find it, God is who gives you the power to overcome that. And so when we talk about communication, guys, it is possible to voice how you feel and still be a man.
Let me add on to what you said just now. You said God gives you the power, right?
Mm-hmm.
Part of God giving you because we also don't see this, right? Part of God giving you the power is God giving you the tools.
Yep.
Because He doesn't always fix it for you. part of God fixing the issue is putting the hammer in your hand until you get to work.
Right.
Because it means that you have to. It means that you have to take stuff out of your life,
right,
to make provision for the solution. You can't fix the problem if you don't remove it.
Yeah.
And God is really genius at saying, you know what? I know what the problem is, and I could snap my finger and it'll be gone. No, you're not gonna learn from that. No. I'm gonna give you this pliers until you unscrew that nut, because that don't fit.
Right.
But then it's up to us to say, am I gonna unscrew this nut? No. Am I comfortable with how it feels? Right?
Can't delay.
Even though it rusted.
You can't delay.
Can't delay. You gotta get rid of that.
Yeah.
What I also will say, bro, is that I am super proud of you. Like, I've seen your stuff and the development that you've taken in doing this. I remember we had talked about this. Being able to talk your talk and speak your mind. That really has shown your development. Like, you've grown immensely in being a person. We ain't even talking about Christianity right now. We're just talking about being a human being. Because part of being a human being is showing love. And part of showing love is being able to edify and educate people.
Right.
That is, you should be very happy with your development, because it is impressive. It has actually helped me really focus on edification and improvement as just a motto. Whenever you meet people, whenever I meet people, whenever I'm doing projects, whenever I'm doing work, whenever I'm working on a company, like, what is my goal? I want to educate and empower people. That has to be it.
Right.
That's what Jesus did when he got here.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, guys, I just want to thank you all for watching this series. It really has been special for me. I really pray that it has blessed you all, and I would just encourage you guys to continue to share it, because this is something that we guys need to hear. There is strength in vulnerability, especially towards God, and if we would just lean into Him, He will take us on, show us His love, and empower us to go on another level. But I also want to thank you, Omari, for joining me on this. I really appreciate your perspective.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. So I hope to have you on the channel again.
Yeah, B.
You know, stay locked and loaded. You understand?
You gotta do this
so
again.
Guys, I just want to thank you all once again for watching this. If this is something that blessed you, I pray that you will leave a like and also consider subscribing down below. Also, if you want to follow Omari on any of his social platforms, I will link his information down below in the description. But until next time, guys, I pray that you all stay blessed and that you stay in His presence.